America during the 1920s was a hostile environment for communists, socialists, anarchists, and left-wingers alike. This was the time of the First Red Scare. The First Red Scare that had followed World War I had a profound effect on American culture. It gave communism an evil connotation. Americans thus made different decisions, such as making harsher immigration laws and passing anti-communism legislation. Before we take a look at the impact of this movement, let's look at the causes of it. During the year 1917, Russia erupted into war. The Bolsheviks, a group of radicals in Russia, stormed the country and took over their government. Due to the large number of labor unions in the US during the time, many people believed that this wave of radical thinking would spread to the US, due to the fact that the Bolshevik Revolution was caused by a group of oppressed workers. This never would have happened in America, though, because only 0.1% of the population would consider themselves anarchists or communists. Violence against the alleged Reds, as they were called, broke out. It started in the year 1919 in the city of Seattle, when the mayor sent troops to attack a union strike. Matters only got worse in June of that same year. Two bombs went off, one in Wall Street and one in Washington, D.C. Nobody knew who had set these bombs off, but it was automatically blamed on the socialists. Then, in 1921, two Italian immigrants, Nicola Sacco and Bartolomeo Vanzetti, were arrested and imprisoned for allegedly murdering a paymaster. 6 years later, they were executed. There was no way that these two men could have won the trial. The general public was just too opposed to their red idealism at the time.
Sacco Vanzetti lays bare a lot of the mythology about American society, right? It certainly shows the difference between what America is supposed to be about and what it has been in certain circumstances.
This is not about Vanzetti. It's not a question of whether he was guilty or innocent. It's about us.
The US government used anti-communist and anti-socialist propaganda to spread hate of these two things throughout the nation. This was a true driving force of the Red Scare in America. The American Legion, formed in St. Louis in May of 1919, was a group of people with a particular interest in ridding America of radical thoughts. They believed in 100% Americanism, and by the end of the year, had over 1 million members. The American Legion did have a profound impact. Eventually, Leave the Red Sea Legion became what is today. What up? By far, the two most oppressed groups of people during this time were the members of the Industrial Workers of the World, better known as Wobblies, and the members of the Socialist Party of America. These two groups of people were the source of outrage and riots throughout America during this time frame. In order to control the loud mouths of these groups of people, the US government passed the Alien Act. This law made it so that any alien could be deported or arrested if he or she was caught teaching or advocating anything that might be considered anti-government. This included the teachings of Karl Marx and the ideas of Lenin, among others. This obstruction to free speech was justified by classifying teaching or advocating these ideas as destructive towards the nation. Attorney General A. Mitchell Palmer was known to be a prolific anti-communist advocator. He conducted a series of raids throughout the country from 1919 to 1920. These raids were aimed at expelling dangerous individuals out of the country. He ended up having 249 Russians deported in the Soviet Ark, which was sent to Mother Russia, the place where all of this commotion started. Palmer also created the General Intelligence Division of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The purpose of this was to investigate the secret whereabouts of the American Bolsheviks. This led to the arrest of many innocent individuals, many times without warrant, due to them being suspected of being suspicious. Any sort of hint or clue of someone being communist could have landed them in prison. Another law passed in direct response to the Red Scare was the Espionage Act. This law, like others of the time, was targeted at the Wobblies and the Socialists of America. It punished anyone who obstructed the operation of the armed forces or was insubordinate or displayed disloyalty within the forces. This act, like the Alien and Sedition Act, gave the government yet another excuse to deport and arrest communists and socialists. In response to the massive waves of immigrants flooding into the United States, Congress passed the Emergency Immigration Act of 1921, which consisted of two main parts. First, immigration from a specific nation was limited to 3% of that nation's population living in the United States. Secondly, an overall maximum annual quota of 3,570 people was imposed. This would later be revised and changed in the Immigration Restriction Act of 1924. Congress figured that the reason that there was so much thought of rebellion in the country was that there was a lot of people from socialist and communist countries coming to the US. They figured that if they could control the flow of the dastardly idea, then they could stop its evil from spreading and causing further chaos in the country. They specifically targeted these countries by using the 1890 census instead of the 1910 census. This meant that there would be more Northwestern Europeans instead of Southeastern Europeans allowed into the country. This outright discrimination against Southeastern Europeans was caused both by World War I and the Red Scare. Okay, so what has been learned throughout this video? The government's fear of giving true power to the people led them to fuel this Great Scare. The first Red Scare had a profound effect on American culture during the years after World War I. Many laws, such as the Alien Act, Espionage Act, and the Emergency Immigration Act, were passed due to the fear Americans had of a Bolshevik-style revolution happening in the homeland. The use of anti-communist propaganda further spread the idea of it being evil throughout the country. This propaganda put the idea in the heads of American minds that it wasn't the oppression and the discontent of the American workforce that caused them to form unions and cause strikes. It was, in fact, their false left-winged ideology and socialism that caused them to supposedly plan to overthrow the government. Obviously, this was wrong, but because of the fear that American people had that their way of life might be changed, they were willing to believe anything and everything that the government told them. And on that note, I bid you adieu. Have a great day.